Most people who travel in a camper accept three things as part of the deal: cold nights, gear that never fully dries, and an interior that smells like a damp cave by the second week. Norway refused all three. In a climate where getting it wrong can genuinely kill you, the answers were worked out over generations in timber houses, mountain cabins, and fishing boats, and almost every one of them shrinks down into a camper van, a caravan, or a motorhome. Today, we're counting down 15 Norwegian camper ideas that instantly fix everyday problems. Stay until the end, because number 15 clears the most fought-over surface in any camper kitchen. If you saw what Norway does inside a house, this is the same thinking compressed into 6 square meters, and almost none of it needs a workshop, a welder, or a second mortgage. Number 1. Pant, the deposit that follows you. Living in a camper means living with your own trash. Empty bottles and cans stack up in a bag by the sliding door. They rattle down every gravel road, and eventually, you go looking for a recycling point that gives you nothing in return. Norway removed that problem with a national deposit return system called Pant. Every drink container carries a small deposit, usually 2 or 3 Norwegian kroner, added at the till. Walk into almost any Norwegian grocery store, and there's an automated reverse vending machine right inside the entrance. You feed in the empties one at a time. The machine counts them, and it prints a slip you redeem against your shopping or take as cash. The national return rate sits above 90%. For anyone traveling in a vehicle, that changes the math completely. Your empties stop being clutter and turn into a small refund every time you restock. The habit is worth copying anywhere a deposit scheme exists. Number 2. The insulation envelope, built the TEK-17 way. The instinctive response to a cold vehicle is a bigger heater and more fuel. Norwegian building regulations, known as TEK-17 and enforced since 2017, take the opposite approach. New homes there have to hit strict insulation depths, pass air tightness testing, and use triple-glazed windows as a baseline rather than an upgrade. The building is engineered to hold on to the heat it already has, including the warmth coming off human bodies, cooking, and low winter sunlight through the glass. Applied to a camper, the same logic changes everything. Every steel rib and cross member in a vehicle body is a thermal bridge, a direct metal path between the freezing outside air and your warm interior. Break those bridges with insulating strips, fill the cavities properly instead of stuffing them, and seal the vapor layer with real care. The payoff is a vehicle that holds temperature for hours after the heater shuts off, and no freezing corners where moisture collects and mold begins. The cheapest heat you'll ever have is the heat you already paid for. Number 3. Vindfang, the wind catcher. Every time a door slides open in winter, the same sequence follows. Freezing air floods the whole living space in one breath. Snow and mud come in on your boots, and the heater has to claw back everything it just lost. Norwegian houses answer this with a vindfang, which translates literally as wind catcher. It's a small enclosed entrance room sitting between the front door and the rest of the house, working as a thermal airlock. Full-size motorhomes copy it directly with a walk-in wet locker beside the habitation door. In a smaller vehicle, the same principle still works. A heavy curtain hung on a track behind the sliding door, a boot tray on rubber matting, and coat hooks on the door pillar create a defined zone where the cold, the slush, and the wet outer layers stop. Your bed, your food, and your electronics stay on the dry side of that curtain. One small area to clean instead of the whole vehicle. If these ideas are useful to you, tap the like button. It tells YouTube this is worth showing to more people. And subscribe so you catch the rest of the list. Number 4. Dry heat instead of damp heat. 2 campers can run identical heaters at identical temperatures and wake up with completely different windows. The difference is where the combustion moisture goes. Burning gas indoors on an unvented heater or a stovetop releases water vapor straight into the air you're breathing, and a single evening of cooking can put a surprising amount of water into a space the size of a small bathroom. Norwegian winter travelers overwhelmingly run diesel air heaters instead, drawing fuel from the vehicle tank and venting every trace of exhaust and moisture out through the floor. The air circulating inside never touches the flame. Warm, genuinely dry air comes out of the ducting, and the windows stay clear on nights well below freezing. If you cook with gas, run the extractor while you do it and crack a window, because that steaming pot is doing the same job as an unvented heater. Dry heat is the single biggest difference between a camper that feels crisp in winter and one that smells like a wet tent. Number 5. Balanced ventilation you never switch off. Sealing a vehicle tightly solves the drafts and creates a new problem. 2 people sleeping in an insulated box put out well over a liter of moisture overnight through breathing alone, and with nowhere to go, it lands on the coldest surface it can find. Norwegian building codes require balanced mechanical ventilation in homes. Filtered outside air comes in continuously. Humid air gets pulled out of the bathroom and kitchen, and most of the heat is recovered from the outgoing stream on the way. The camper version is far simpler than it sounds. Run the roof fan on its lowest extraction setting all night, every night, and give it a small, low-level intake vent to pull from, ideally near the floor at the opposite end. The airflow is barely perceptible and costs almost nothing from the battery. The vehicle breathes gently through the night, instead of you throwing a window open at 7 in the morning and dumping all your heat at once. Number 6. Turkeskap, the drying cabinet. A soaked shell jacket, damp wool socks, and boots with an inch of slush in them have nowhere sensible to go. They end up draped over the seats, hung off the roof bars, or slowly steaming on top of the heater vent, which is exactly the same as pouring water into your air. Norwegian homes and cabins have solved this for decades with a Turkeskap, a tall enclosed cabinet with gentle heating elements and a small low-power fan that circulates warm air until everything inside is dry. Because the temperature stays low and nothing tumbles, waterproof membranes and wool fibers survive treatment that would wreck them in a machine dryer. In a camper, the workable version is a slim ventilated locker built directly over a warm air duct, with a mesh shelf, a hanging rail, and its own small outlet vent to the outside, so the moisture leaves rather than recirculating. Wet gear goes in, the door shuts, and by morning, it's dry and out of sight. Number 7. Varme Kabler, heat from the floor up. Warm air rises, which means a heater blowing at head height leaves the floor consistently cold. You step down from the bed onto an icy surface. Your boots by the door never dry out, and the coldest air in the vehicle sits exactly where you put your feet. Norwegian bathrooms fixed this decades ago with Varme Kabler, electric heating cables laid directly under the tile during construction. The room warms from the ground upward, bare feet stay comfortable, and residual moisture on the floor evaporates continuously, which prevents mold at the grout lines. Camper versions run either as thin electric mats under vinyl flooring or as a hydronic loop fed by a diesel water heater. Both do the same job. Heat enters the space at the lowest point and rises through it evenly. The floor and lower walls stay above dew point, so condensation never forms there, and wet boots dry where they stand. The bulky wall heater that used to eat an entire cabinet is gone. Number 8. Wool as the default fabric. Cotton soaks up moisture and stays cold and heavy once it's wet. Cheap synthetics hold odor after a single day, which matters enormously when laundry is a 2-week expedition. Norwegians reach for wool, for nearly everything worn or slept under. Wool fibers absorb a significant amount of water vapor into the fiber itself, while still feeling dry against the skin. They keep insulating when damp, and they resist odor well enough that a base layer can be worn for days and simply aired out overnight. In a camper, that translates directly into wool blankets on the bed, a wool duvet or topper, wool base layers, and wool socks in the drying cabinet. You wash less, you carry less, you buy water less often, and you stop waking up under a clammy synthetic quilt. It costs more at the till, and then lasts long enough that you stop noticing. Number 9. The two duvet bed. Couples everywhere accept the nightly blanket tug of war as part of sharing a bed, and in a camper, where the mattress is often narrow and the temperature swings 20 degrees between evening and dawn, it's considerably worse. The Scandinavian answer is so ordinary that Norwegian hotels do it as standard. Two separate single duvets laid side by side on one double mattress. Each person picks their own weight and warmth rating, so the one who runs hot and the one who's always freezing both get exactly what they need. Pulling the covers off the other person becomes physically impossible. Two smaller duvets also air out and dry far faster than one large one, which matters when everything picks up overnight moisture, and making the bed in the morning takes about 10 seconds. Fold two rectangles, stack them at the foot, done. Cheapest comfort upgrade on this entire list, and it works in a caravan you bought yesterday. Before number 10, one thing worth mentioning. There's a side of this I keep out of the videos, and it isn't the design side, it's the money side. What a camper actually costs to run once you're living in it. How insurance and road tax work when the vehicle is also your address. What happens to your healthcare cover when you're out of the country for 6 months at a stretch, where people keep their post and their storage, and the residency rules that quietly decide all of it. It changes by country, and it changes every year, so it belongs somewhere I can keep it current, not in a script I recorded months ago and can't correct. It's written up as the Van Life Savings Manual. If you're already out there, if you're doing the sums before you commit, or if you've got a son or a daughter on the road right now, send it to them. The link is in the description, or scan the code on screen. Now, back to the list. Number 10. Motor varmer posts and the plug-in habit. Off-grid power is the running battle. Solar output collapses in winter, generators are noisy and unwelcome, and campsite fees add up fast when all you need is a few hours on shore power. Norway has an unusual advantage here that grew out of engine block heaters, motorvarmer in Norwegian. Ordinary car parks, workplaces, and apartment blocks across the country have rows of weatherproof electrical posts standing in the snow, installed so drivers can pre-warm their engines through the winter. They're generally permit-based or app-operated rather than free, but the effect is a country wired for vehicles to plug in as a matter of routine. Alongside that sits a dense network of roadside service points, where you can empty waste tanks and take on fresh water properly. The Norwegian traveler's habit is to plan a route around that infrastructure rather than around campsites. You pay for a pitch when there's a real reason to, not by default. Number 11. Allemannsretten and the rest area network. Overnight parking anxiety is a permanent tax. You end up circling an unfamiliar town after dark, reading signs, and hoping nobody knocks on the window at 2 in the morning. Norway operates under Allemannsretten, the right to roam, written into law in the Outdoor Recreation Act of 1957. It gives everyone access to uncultivated land regardless of who owns it. The right applies to people on foot rather than vehicles, so a motorhome can't simply drive off across open country, and there are clear rules on distance from houses and how long you can stay. What it creates is a national attitude. Norway maintains an extensive network of rasteplasser, proper rest areas, and scenic pull-offs along the main roads and mountain passes, where overnight stops in a vehicle are widely accepted wherever the signs don't say otherwise. The unspoken condition is absolute. You leave the place cleaner than you found it, you keep the noise down, and you don't set out chairs and an awning like it's a campsite. Number 12. Daylight first finishes. Dark upholstery, walnut cabinets, and a stained timber ceiling photograph beautifully and turn an interior into a cave the moment the sun drops behind a hill. Norwegian interiors treat daylight as a scarce structural resource rather than a decorative bonus, because for months of the year, it genuinely is. That's why the classic Nordic interior runs pale birch plywood, white or off-white walls, and light-colored floors. Those surfaces work as a continuous reflective system, catching whatever low-angle light comes through the windows and bouncing it deep into the room instead of swallowing it. In a space this small, the effect is immediate and slightly startling. The same layout, with the same window openings, reads as noticeably larger and brighter, and you reach for the lights an hour or two later in the evening. Keep the window surrounds slim, skip the heavy blinds during daylight hours, and let the pale surfaces do the work. Number 13. Floating, wall-hung furniture. Anything standing on the floor creates two problems at once. It traps dirt and grit underneath where you can't reach, and it blocks the airflow that keeps the floor dry. Norwegian bathrooms took the extreme version of this and hung the toilet itself on the wall, concealing the tank inside the wall cavity so the floor runs as one uninterrupted surface a mop can cross in a single pass. Camper builds benefit from exactly the same discipline. Hang the shoe cabinet, the bench seats, and the lower cupboards off the wall structure, so there's a clear gap between their base and the floor. Sweeping becomes one continuous movement rather than a negotiation around table legs and cabinet plinths. Air circulates under everything, so damp never gets trapped in a dead corner. Structurally, you're transferring load into the walls rather than the floor pan, and a run of unbroken floor makes the whole space look considerably wider than it is. Number 14. Water routed to survive a freeze. The first hard frost of the season is when most water systems reveal their design flaws. An external tank turns to slush. A pipe run inside an uninsulated skirt splits overnight, and the pump runs dry while you stand there holding a kettle. Norwegian builders work to a simple rule that applies just as well to a camper as to a mountain cabin. Everything that holds water lives inside the heated envelope. Fresh tank, gray tank if you can manage it, pump, filters, and every pipe run stay within the insulated, heated interior rather than hanging in the cold air under the floor. Where a pipe absolutely has to cross a cold zone, it gets wrapped in insulated foam lagging and sits inside a vented locker rather than open to the wind. Then you add drain valves at every low point in the system. 5 minutes of work empties the whole thing before a freeze arrives, instead of leaving you with split fittings and a flooded floor in the morning. Number 15. The oversinked drying cabinet. Every camper kitchen ends up in the same state. A plastic dish rack permanently occupying a third of the worktop, dripping into a tray that needs emptying, sliding across the surface every time you take a corner, and leaving hard watermarks on the counter underneath. The Nordic solution is architectural rather than organizational, and it goes back to a Swedish design from 1945 that spread across Scandinavia within a decade. The cabinet mounted directly above the sink has no solid base. Instead, it's fitted with open wire mesh shelving. A wash plate goes straight from the basin into the cupboard above. The water drips through the mesh and falls directly back into the sink, and the door closes on it. The dishes dry exactly where they're stored. No second step, no rack to empty, no tray to wipe out. The most valuable surface in the entire vehicle stays permanently clear. 15 ideas, and there's one thread running through all of them. Norway didn't get warmer, drier, or brighter by accident. Somebody looked at a daily irritation that everyone else had quietly agreed to live with and decided it was a design problem with a solution. That works just as well in 6 square meters as it does in a house above the Arctic Circle. If you want more ideas from places that engineered around the problems the rest of us simply put up with, like this video and subscribe. The manual is linked in the description, And the code is on screen now. And take a look at the end screen for what to watch next.